welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure. If you don't say we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
When you call the police station, before they even leave, they take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle, as to strike.
Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a life. The president never gave me any deadline.
A great way to begin a great day is by tuning in and waking up and having to tune into the morning show live here on Global Television, reaching you from the nation's capital. Good morning and welcome to Global Morning, a program where we extract some developments in the nation and across the world. My name is Edika Michael and it's a pleasure to have you joining us this morning. I'm not going to just be doing this alone. I have a colleague in the studio with me.
Always a pleasure to know that you're joining us here. First off, good morning, Mike. It's good to see you. You look sharp like a 1,000 naira bill.
Probably I'm warming up for Donald Trump appointment.
Well, I hope our MD will be magnanimous enough to give you some leave of absence. Well, I mean, what can we do? The important thing is you're bringing value regardless of the role or the geography where you're serving. Like Mike said, it's an amazing day. No better time to be alive, like they say. And we're just here to make it worth the while for you. You will get some return on investment of your time by the time we wrap it up today.
A lot of development, of course, just yesterday the president was able to meet with Ogoni leaders at the presidential villa. Just the first official visit on his return from the United Arab Emirates. A lot of person reading meanings to that meeting, most especially having former Governor Wike and Governor Fubara at the same roof at the same time and having a way of sitting down with the president. The content of that meeting are developing. Some said it has to do with the issue of oil exploration and resumption of oil in Ogoni and all of this concern. But is that also a move to resolve the issues and the political issues in Rivers State? Does that also signal that the president might also have that, at the close-up meeting that they had? All of that are what we are really paying attention yesterday as well to know how that can really be resolved. But away from that, at the National Assembly, a lot of development, ministries, departments, and agencies are also appearing before the Joint Committee of the National Assembly to defend the budget. And the Nigerians are raising questions about the repetition of the content, the effectiveness of implementation, and all of that. These are still big development in Nigeria, and of course, we are still putting our eyes across to track some of these development for you.
It's interesting. I mean, you have just bundled a handful of issues into one quick conversation. We understand, for example, that NGOs have been committed to put up their defense with regards to the 2025 budget proposal, which we hope will pass in a matter of, say, 2 weeks, for example, because as it stands right now, we've already cracked up the January-December budgetary cycle, which in itself can be problematic because budgeting is both scientific and systematic. So once you alter the mood, it becomes very concerning. That's on the one hand. We're going to get into all of those details, the copy and paste pattern with which we push our budgets in this country, which is quite disturbing. Recently, a very young federal legislator, son of the immediate past governor of Kaduna State, I'd like to call him Nasir El-Rufai Jr., stood up, that's Honorable Bello El-Rufai, stood up on the floor of the National Assembly to talk about how that, who is going to explain to us that, for the purpose of this conversation, Edika Michael is, say, the DG of XYZ agency. When you brought your budget in 2021, we saw cutlery, we saw computers, we saw furniture, we saw interior decoration. 2022, we saw the same exact items, and you repeated that in 2023 and 2024. This is 2025. You are replicating the same exact items, and nobody is saying, hold on a second, do you buy cutlery every year? Do you buy computers every year? Do you buy furniture every year? Exactly. And we go to these offices too, even though we are not in the public service. We also go to these offices for a number of reasons. It's the same furniture that we see. It's the same computers. In fact, sometimes you're seeing the same computer for 6-8 years. Sometimes for those computers, in the case of subnationals, let's say at the state level, you realize that some computers have witnessed 3 governors, each of whom have done 2 terms. Exactly. So what's the point of all of this? It means there's no sincerity of purpose in the way we budget. At a point, a few senators even had the courage to get up to say, look, what most of these DGs and executive secretaries and even ministers do is they just go look for the budget from the previous year, alter a thing here and there, look at inflation numbers, add here, add there, bring it back as their own proposal for the year in front of them. Now, if you budget like that, you're running a criminal enterprise. I mean, we've got to say it the way it is. That's what you're doing. Because budget is very important. And I'll give you a quick example that we all can relate with. By the time the immediate past governor of Edo State returned to office for the second year, it took him 11 months. I mean, for perspective, he won that election in September, and then he was sworn 12th of November 2020. Of course, he was going to do the next 4 years to 12th of November 2024. Now, think about this for a second. Now, this governor's election is sworn on the 12th of November. It takes till October the next year before he eventually has a cabinet in place. Which means for 11 straight months, the governor does not have a cabinet in place. And you're asking yourself, on what basis was he awarding contracts, approving contracts? Because you've got to have, the Constitution is very clear on this, the ground norm, as we call it in Nigeria, on how that it is vital, in fact, is a fundamental factor for you to have a cabinet in place as a governor, for you to be able to approve contracts and award contracts. And the threshold in that regard is 1 billion. But we saw that contracts were awarded to the tune of billions, even without a cabinet in place. To the point that it got so bad, you would invite people from the former governor's camp to come talk on television about this issue. They will show up. What's the point we're making all of this? I think that just get taken for granted again and again. And nobody seems to really care because all politicians are concerned about, like they say, it's not the next generation, it's the next election, and everybody's looking at the optics. That's for the issue of budget. But we can't forget in a hurry too that while we are doing all of this, the issue of insecurity is getting rife by the day in the southwestern part of the country. We are hearing now that Amoteco is now having to double down on these challenges because we're hearing that some very extreme terror cells are beginning to invade the southwest. These are very, very concerning issues. And we'll come back to the issue of the meeting of yesterday. At the point, because I was part of the production of the news yesterday evening, and I was asking myself, hold on a second, how do you have Governor Siminalayi Fubara in the same room as someone like his predecessor and estranged political godfather, Nyesom Wike, now Minister of the FCT, and then in between you have Ogoni leaders. Now there are people whose theory about this meeting from yesterday evening is that, hold on a second, we know what the antics are here. We want to make it look like we're talking about oil exploration in that state. We want to make it look like we're talking about Ogoni land cleanup, which didn't even see the light of day when former President Muhammadu Buhari and his vice, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, said it was priority number 1 for them. We recall very vividly how that 20 billion naira had been earmarked for the cleanup of Ogoni. But today, almost nobody is talking about that anymore. So for yesterday, there's a pretty good chance that what just happened was to say, look, the real reason for this meeting is we want to take a second look, or let's say another look, because we've taken several looks already, another look at this Wike Fubara field. But why don't we look for something like a front, like a camouflage to say, well, we want to talk about the cleanup of Ogoni land. But actually, there's a pretty good chance that the president himself feels there's no better time to resolve this and put it to bed than now.
A lot of the meanings that have been read towards that meeting, which for many persons, is a courageous move as well by the president, because many were still putting their eyes in a year after, would you say, the president had earlier intervened in the matter. But a lot of the crises actually escalated, leading to people, the people of Rivers State having to also, look to critically engage both the parties of Wike Camps and Fubara. But at the end of the day, the judiciary has also been in the spot. And I don't ask, would the judiciary be able to resolve the issue? Can the issue be judicially resolved in a way? But This might also be a political move and intentions. And all of that, the people of Rivers State just actually want peace within that state. And of course, it is also a fragile state, knowing fully well the contribution of that state to national development. So it is important, and of course, it is still in order. We have other stories, and of course, we'll be bringing to you this morning. But for now, let's get to go on a quick break, and once we return, we'll bring you the national dailies for you this morning. Stay with us. We begin today by looking at the Guardian newspaper. The front page of the Guardian having some interesting stories right there. Metering gap, which is on page 6. Over 7 million on estimated billing despite 1.5 trillion naira intervention and free supply. That's really towards a description about the state of the power sector, as well as all of these concerns. The metering interventions, how far, how well, that you can actually read from the page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. I also have Tinubu meet Ogoni leaders as CSOs falls fresh oil exploration bid. That you can find on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper as well. Over 100 terrorist financiers convictions, 2 years. Convicted in 2 years. That is Tinubu reveals on page 20 of the Guardian as well, respect to the issues of terrorism in Nigeria. Over 100 terrorist financiers convicted in 2 years. You can actually find that more details on the page 20 of the Guardian newspaper. WHO regrets U.S. withdrawal, anticipates review amid global health uncertainty. That's from the United States. Of course, Donald Trump had hinted the withdrawal of U.S. from the World Health Organization. U.S. said, can you take an afterthought? Can you reconsider that move? And knowing the implication this may also have on the world and global health issues, that's the reaction of the WHO in respect to the move by the U.S. to withdraw from the World Health Organization. FG confirms anthrax outbreak in Zamfara, urges heightened vigilance. And I also have still on the health issues, Nigeria risks empty hospitals over workers exit. CND styles reps. That's on page 30 of the Guardian as well, reacting to the state of the healthcare, the Japa syndrome, which is still on the high side within the health sector. and actually informing the National Assembly, look, if we don't pay attention, we risk empty hospital where we can't find health workers again. But it's still a development. On the other hand, Nigeria government are also saying that we are putting things in place to ensure better welfareism of the workers and all of those requests. But how far can this really be put to work so as to reduce its numbers? Looking at the standard of having hospitals within the primary care centers and hospitals, which is so much of importance for national development. That and a few stories that we are having from the Guardian newspaper. We now turn our attention to the Daily Trust for you this morning.
Okay, real quick, let's see what we have from the Daily Trust. We begin with the headlines immediately above and beneath the main masts of today's issue of the Daily Trust newspaper. Top left, it says EU-UN kick as Trump pulls US out of WHO Paris Agreement. Of course, for the issue of Paris Agreement, no doubt, virtually everybody who saw Trump between 2017 and 2021 already knew he was going to pull this plug again, and here we are. FG approves new Polytechnic name seats after Tinubu. We understand the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory has had a request sent to him to allocate plots for temporary and permanent sites for these proposed polytechnic that will be named after incumbent President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Well, Gwarinpa, people have said, has the largest estate in West Africa, some even say in Africa. Gwarinpa is a very, if you like, vital part of the FCT, and as such, the argument is in favor of the fact that if you start a polytechnic there, it's going to bring substantial value to that area, academic, social, and economic as well. But let's see what more headlines we have for you this morning on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. All right, gunmen kill 7 traders in Yobe Market. 3 attackers gunned down. That again is in the northeast parts of the country. The Star story reads, with Akika, Jakba hospitals will be empty in 2 years. That's chief medical directors are the ones to whom that story is credited. 2 riders accompany the headline. The first says, judges military more favored. NNA, 16,000 doctors left Nigeria in 5 years. Now do the math. That's, quite disturbing number of doctors leaving the country on account of the Jakba syndrome. You go to the accidents and emergency wards of many teaching hospitals or federal medical centers across this country. You'll be shocked the sights that you see. It's gory. People who have been involved in nasty accidents, then of course shortage of doctors. Sometimes you come into an A&E, as they call it, ward of a hospital that's supposed to be a teaching hospital. You find just 1 doctor, you find 2 nurses, one is with a lot of experience, the other nurse has next to no experience, and you're asking, is this 25 years into a new millennium in Africa's #1, as they say, country? But what it just shows is that we are not putting our money where our mouth is, because you can't say you're paying attention to the health sector at this level and then you're dealing with this scale of rots in that same sector. And then you're wondering, are we thinking in terms of UCH, UHC, universal health coverage, all right, which is a big conversation across the globe. Now, Donald Trump is pulling the US out of, the WHO. Some people say, the American system can deal with whatever shocks will come as a result of that action. But can that be said of Nigeria? Look at the budget has been proposed now, even though it has not been passed. What are the numbers saying in terms of what is proposed for the healthcare sector? People have to be alive for anything else to happen. But we're acting like we don't understand that direction of how the conversation should be going. All right, let's take it down a little, just at the foot of the front page of Daily Trust today. Abuja Cardinal Road awarded to InfoQuest, not InfoQuest. Minister, that's a bit of clarification there for you so that we don't get misinformed or misled. Good thing is you can read up those details for yourself on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper today. All right, let's flip it over now to this day newspaper, and Michael has those details for us.
On the This Day newspaper, we also have issues concerning that of President Tinubu meeting with Ogoni leaders. Tinubu is saying we can't heal past wounds if we continue to be hungry. That is attributed to the president. Of course, he has direct NSA Ribadu to coordinate inclusive negotiation with them. Says his government will prioritize peace, justice, and sustainable development in the land. That's still from the development regards to the meeting. I mean, we can't heal the past wound if we continue to be hungry. That's an appeal for peace in a way within that region as well. But away from that, also a call for a political peace. Those who may have that concern as well. Akume, these are secretary to the Federation. We have prosecuted and convicted over 100 terrorist financiers in 2 years. That is on page 40 of this day newspaper. Then we also have Bagudu Tinubu steering economy in right direction, determined to stay course. It says petroleum, solid minerals, creative industry sectors tax to unlock potential. Explains how tax reform bills passage will achieve 18% revenue to GDP target. President reforms will rest Nigeria, says Governor Sani. Okay, we reset Nigeria. That's coming from the governor of Kaduna State. That President Tinubu's reforms will reset Nigeria. And also the last writer to that story on steering economy says he sees spends associated with federal government policies temporary. That's still in the concern of the reforms of the president, the economic situation. I mean, it would take a pause to also consider, because sometimes we have a projection for 2025. Mr. President on his broadcast said 2025 is going to be a better year. Experts were given look at to analyze the projection that probably may actually determine how 2025 will work. But in all of that, it also shows the fact that yes, the economy now, those are having a concern that it looks that is improving. The prices of fuel the other time, was able to drop from 1,200 to 980. Now it has gone back to 1,000. Even Dangote said, it's not from me. It has to do with the global market. But we're having a concern how government can also hasten up efforts that this reduction, even said the reforms are working, kind of begin to reflect on the life of Nigeria, because where Nigeria are having issues that things are still the same, from 2023 where subsidy was gone to now, all of that reforms is still finding it very hard to get to the grassroots. They should look at hastening up processes and means to see how this thing can get, really trickle down. Distribution of 70,000 naira to poorest of the poor. Those are asking questions about the integrity of that move. How far can that go? What is the statistics for getting the poorest of the poor? The previous money that we've shared, the beneficiaries now brilliant, economically, are they able to stand strong? We also had the previous administration, sharing, distributing funds as well, just to cushion effective hardship. Look back at the statistics of those who were able to get this, if really they got, because from my village, I can't really say we have people participated as well. So, in a way, it should be more away from the distributions and handouts. Can we get to see how some of these things, gets to reflect on the life of Nigerians, which is the major concerns right there. These are the few stories we're having on this day newspaper. We'll now turn our attention to the Vanguard for you this morning.
Okay, quickly from the Vanguard, everyone. We begin with the big headline first. It says politicians disagree on why opposition is crumbling. About half a dozen riders with that headline there. Judiciary should rise up to its responsibility. That's Ekbayong. It shows profound crisis in our political landscape. Oyeleshe. LP fingers use of state resources to lure opposition in figures. Democracy is facing challenges, Cops cry. Let's see what's more. Principles in a short supply in our climb, ex-PDP spokesman Ologbo Dino. What more do we have? Says stomach interest responsible for the defections to ruling party, Owoko. Well, has that always been the practice? Let's take things up a little higher now, just above the main plate of the Vanguard newspaper today. We begin with the ones top right corner. It says Nigeria prosecuted 100 terror financiers in 2 years. That's according to President Bola Tinubu. Poor pay, health workers leaving hospitals becoming empty, CMDs tell. Reps. FG alerts Nigerians over outbreak of anthrax in Zamfara. Then at the very top of it, it says CBN vows to tackle buying, selling of Naira notes. Hopefully we find the balls to do that. Alright, let's bring things down a notch lower. Tinubu has steered the economy in the right direction. That's according to Minister of Budget and National Planning, former Governor of Kebbi State, Abubakar Bagudu, there talking. There's a ticker with the next headline here. It says 2025 WEF, that's the World Economic Forum. Africa has woken up. VP Shetima is the person to whom that headline is credited. NLC blames Power Ministry, NERC for unending greed collapses. You know, this blame game, Michael, over greed and other issues of national interest, it doesn't cut it for Nigerians, because even the Minister of Power is not telling us the problems. All right, Chief Adeba Adelabu, with all due respect, you know that Nigerians knew these problems before even this government, this administration came into power. So Nigerians are not a hairstrand interested in the problems, as they are keen to see what the solutions are. As a minister, you have very critical agencies under your ministry. What are you doing with them? How much of leadership are you providing? How effective is that leadership? What will your ministry, with all the agencies under it, achieve, or at least what do they intend to achieve in 2025? The problem is humongous, no doubt about that. That's why you were appointed. I'm sure the president reposes a significant measure of confidence in your ability, your competence, your experience, all right, to deliver in this regard. So if you come on television, you go to the pages of newspaper, what you do is to sell us back what we already know. Then we're asking ourselves, what do we need in the first instance, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and see a few more headlines for you. The bottom left this time. Birthright citizenship, civil rights groups sue Trump over executive order. Well, we understand it's a constitutional matter, the issue of birthright citizenship in the U.S., which the president says he was going to reverse from day one, but that move seems to have hit an obstacle right now. How the president will knock down that barrier, constitutionally speaking, is yet to be seen. Okay, then let's see a few more for you before we tie it up on the Vanguard newspaper. LG working with governors to end menace of out-of-school children. That's according to Education Minister. And then there's a bit of sport here for you. Mikel lands in Istanbul to convince Osimhen to join Chelsea. We understand that the former Chelsea star is very keen on seeing Osimhen play for his dearly beloved club, so he had to take a trip to Istanbul, Turkey, to ensure that he lends his voice to this very clarion call. Let's take it to the Punch newspaper next.
Now get to the Punch newspaper. Bandit influx. Metricon mobilizes 2,000 men to camp Southwest Forest. The writer says the corps seeks advanced technology, arms, and better equipment to tackle insecurity in the region. Nigeria's public debt hit 142 trillion naira as borrowing rises. That's on page 2. Coming from Edun, Minister of Coordinating Economy. Rahira suffered blackout despite the 14 billion power spending. That's on page 2 as well. Federal government seeks stronger U.S. ties amid Trump's deportation threat. That on page 18 of the Punch as well. You also have NNPC raises petrol price to 990 naira in RCT, 960 naira in Lagos. That's, concern about issues of NNPC, the prices again and again, has also raised eyebrow from many quarters about we will have all of the refineries that NNPC said, look, we're also operating from about 60% from the Port Harcourt refinery, and of course we also have Warri refinery almost on set to start production. What then should we continue to look at the prices, of the PMS, because it looks that was to be believed that the prices would drop, from what we had previously, from 1,100 thereabouts to what Nigerians feels that, this is something workable, this is something they can be able to adapt. But just within a month after, the prices was dropped to about 965 naira. NNPC has also raised their recent prices to over 990, and all the retailers are actually selling at 1,000 naira, which has also raised the eyebrow about the sustainability of it. Are we going backward or are we moving ahead? Are there hope for Nigeria? These are some concerns that have been raised in regards to the energy sector. We also have our fires ex-chief of staff landed 3.9 billion naira forex proceeds. That explanation is given by ICPC on page 7. You can find that story. Immigration arrests 90 foreigners for cybercrime in Rivers. Supreme Court hears Wike Fubara Leali's appeals on February 10. That on page 7. Concern about the issues from Rivers State. We also have the big frame of picture right there. President Tinubu promising fairness as Ogoni oil exploration plan resumes. These are the stories coming from the Punch newspaper this morning for you. We now turn our attention now to catch up stories from the Nigerian Tribune.
All right, thank you, Michael. Let's start with one here on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. Says Tinubu to Ogoni leaders, forget historical grievances, reconcile. Well, that's fair enough to say. The writers tell us directs NSA to coordinate negotiations, asks ministers NNPCL Rivers government to cooperate with NSA. What more do we have? FG alerts Nigerians on anthrax outbreak in Zamfara. That story, incidentally, is replicated across days today. Vandals behind the Guma wellhead fire NNPCL. Ekiti Airport ready for commercial operations. Keyamo Airport, one of the gains of continuity. That's the governor of Ekiti, Oyubanji there. Let's see, what more do we have? Says Senate insists on census this year, decries lack of exercise in 19 years. It's been a long time. Last time we had census in this country was in 2006. We're wondering what data will be relying on. We'll be doing what they call extrapolation in data science.
And after a lot of preparations.
Right, exactly. Of course, we're hoping we could even do that the other time, but here we are still dilly-dallying, as they say. But let's move things up a little higher real quick. NRC expresses outrage over FG's proposed 8 billion naira electricity sensitization bill payment. Tinubu has moved economy in the right direction, determined to stay the course. That's Bagudu. Then above the nameplate, top left corner of it, says CBN predicts 4.17% GDP growth in 2025. That seems a little ambitious, but who says we can achieve if we believe? What else? 2025 budget, that's your kicker. Health workers living in droves, CMDs. Federal hospitals may be empty in the next 2 years, says Lagos University Teaching Hospital Chief Medical Director. You have an article here by Funke Egbemade as well. You can read all of these up if you pick up a copy of the Nigerian Tribune. I think it's time we stepped on our brakes and asked ourselves, Michael, what are the incentives that people find, in the health sector in particular? Of course, people are living even in the tech space, people are living in the finance space, but the healthcare sector is more concerning because that comes closest to home for many people. It has to do with their health, their livelihood, and the factors that determine whether they stay alive or otherwise. A lot of things have been highlighted. First of all is the cordial, friendly working environment when you move abroad. It doesn't necessarily have to be the United States, Canada, or anywhere across the so-called continental America or even Europe. Some of them will move to places like Asia. Others move to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, and all of that. But in all, the question is, why do people have to leave? As of 2009, for example, some piece of statistic did tell us that Ethiopia had more doctors in the US than it had in its own country. Now think about that for a second. This is Ethiopia, producing some of the finest doctors from the continent. Now, some 15 years ago, we already had more doctors, Ethiopian doctors, in America than you had in Ethiopia. Incidentally, we have one thing in common, at least at this point, which is the fact that both Ethiopia and Nigeria are African countries. So why would African doctors raised here, when I mean raised, I use that advisedly, which means that they were trained here, groomed here, got their experience and education here, decide to say, I'm leaving my home country, my country of birth, I'm moving abroad. The reasons are obvious. I remember a former minister who has passed now, once mentioned of how that she ran into a Nigerian in the US who was working as a cameraman. Now, for the first few minutes, she had a conversation with this gentleman. She could tell that he was fulfilled being in the US. He was a cameraman, but that's not even the thrust of this conversation. It would take a few minutes for her to realize that the guy had been trained here as a licensed medical doctor. But he moved abroad and became a cameraman doing photography. The guy said he would rather work and die as a photographer in the US than practice as a doctor in Nigeria. Now, I know some persons are going to laugh over this and catch crews, as we say, across social media about these issues, but these are issues that should provoke profound thoughts for somebody to say, I've been trained here. Let's give Nigeria its flowers for the first time, maybe. Medical education in Nigeria is almost free, which is probably the most expensive form of education anywhere in the world. The numbers don't lie. Look at some of the medical schools, even in Europe, and see what they charge you to study medicine. Bring it back home and see what you pay to qualify as a doctor in Nigeria. Let's forget about the hurdles and all the reasons for a second. So how do you make such investment in young people, most of them young people, and you let them off? I'm not sure Mike and I have those answers for you this morning, but we're just trying to provoke some thoughts so you understand where we're coming from.
Even at NML, I also blaming that, I also have a concern that priority is given to the judges, and priority is given to the military from the report. That they also pay attention.
Let there be equity.
And let there be equity. It should be, with all fairness, government again said, we are trying to set up, plans to see how they can address all of these issues. But in every year, we're seeing people finding alternative. Just, the nursing as well. I also came behind, just in a way to. So, but what we are really advocating, because we also have people that should be, be patriotic enough, is the fact that what the doctors are really, some of them are demanding for is just, a better environment to work. We go to the state of the hospital. Let's just leave the doctors aside. Let's pay attention to the infrastructure we have. What is the state of the hospitals? Go to the primary health, go to all of these hospitals that we have in the local government at the state. What are the state of it? So from there, you cannot know, is this really worth it? Where we do not have lights and all of that. So this should be first the attention of government, away from just jumping in to say, stopping people from migrate, doctors from leaving the country, even deny some nurses license, because some nurses and midwives all the time were protesting that license, all the approval that they used to have, government are not giving just...
And you need that paperwork to work anywhere else in the world.
Paperwork that they need to get, and so the government are having cool hands. That's not a solution, because it's just a temporary means. And the protest is their right. Of course, the demand is, but let's pay attention to our hospitals. What are the local government chairman doing at the state of the hospital? What are the state government also doing in improving the infrastructure? Before one can talk of people that are working, because some doctors are ready to work, but the hospitals are nothing to write them about. They do not even have access to all of the equipment that is needed. So this, I think that yes, health has also served as a priority for this 2025 budget. Can we really have all of that allocation well implemented? Because year in, year out, we have this allocation to the healthcare sector, but things are always, are the same, nothing being improved. A concern that we are repeating is something over and over again and expecting a different result is still a concern.
Quite a shame. That's what can we say. We wrap it up here, everyone, on the Nigerian Tribune. Let's move to our next paper, which is incidentally the last. That's the Nation newspaper for you.
The front page of the Nation newspaper, we also have how tax reform bills will transform economy. That's still the concern, explanations given to the government in respect to the tax reforms bills and the transformation of economy. Trump's executive orders first legal hurdles. It says no to birthright citizenship. Still a developing conversation. We're also seeing some countries having to react to that, also taking all that action against Donald Trump. And it's still a development, and of course we'll see how that can work within the United States. And that story you can find on page 4 to read more details. CMD says that Brand worsening health sector challenges, as we widely had said. DAPA issues and concern from the healthcare workers from Nigeria. Over 100 financiers are prosecuted by federal government. Pobolo assigns portfolios to 6 Edo commissioners. That's on page 26 as well. Development from Edo State. Economy on right track, says Bagado. It says saying that reforms will reset Nigeria. That's the explanation we had earlier hinted you on. Also have a protest over death of Nigerian in South African police custody. That's on page 3 as well. Refers ex-ed in the law gets bail. That's on page 25 as well. These are some of the few stories and development. We earlier informed you about the meeting with the president. We also have here from the Nation newspaper as well. Our plan to restart all production in Ogoni by Tinubu have promises to immortalize the materials right there, and Ezra Ribadu to coordinate peace parley within that communities and region in Rivers State. These are some of the interesting stories and conversation coming from the Nation newspaper for you this morning.
All right, thank you, Michael. Incidentally, those are all the papers for you. Remember to read up details for yourself so you can achieve at least 2 things. Avoid fake news and stay ahead of the news. We'd like to remind all of our viewers that Global Television does not make contributions to the content of these newspapers. All we do is bring you the headlines and just guide you through the direction of the news so you can be better informed. We're taking a quick break now. We're back shortly. Right up ahead, we have the Global AM News for you as well. Do stay with us. thank you everyone for staying with us. Just before we bring you the AM news, just recall that a few days ago, last week, it was quite dark for not just Niger State, but Nigeria on account of the tanker that skidded and fell sideways. Of course, it was not the first. However, after it happened, in the process of mourning and reflecting, the wish became that it would become the very last. Just for the purpose of perspective, 98 persons were said to have died, with several injured on account of that incident. Recall that just before that, there was also one in Jigawa State where we had, by some estimates, close to 150 persons losing their lives, families devastated, community thrown into anguish and mourning. Now, while we're thinking that the one in Niger State a few days back was just, one tanker explosion too many, we're told that another one fell again just yesterday in the same state. People have raised concerns as to why do we have this same issue. Now, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Agency, NMDPRA, says that we are reviewing the framework, the structure around how petrol products are transported across the country. But the question is, will that just be on paper? Is this just going to be something hypothetical, or are we going to see the authorities concerned roll up their sleeves, get their boots on, and then get to work about these things?
It's really sad, and of course our heart still goes out to the family of the people right there in Niger State. Nema said they have given mass funeral for those one, but people don't learn. Nigerians do not also learn lessons. Just yesterday, as you said, people are also trying to scoop fuel.
Right.
You've seen a tanker that failed. Why are you running to scoop fuel? We understand that the economy, economy is hard and all of that, but at the detriment of your life, because if you look at what happened at that Saturday's tanker explosion, people trying to scoop fuel, probably ignited, the fire everywhere, because when people are just trying to, everybody just trying to struggle to scoop, everybody just trying to scoop and all of that, so it gets worse. But at the moment where you see a tanker falls, you should be able to distance yourself. If you're even close to that place, thank God that take one chance, first and get out of the place. But we've seen this repeating itself over and over again. Yes, entirely. We shouldn't at all time. Yes, entirely said government, look, we didn't construct road because they said that Diko junction with the Niger State is very terrible. So every tankers passing through that place and vehicles are always finding it very difficult to navigate themselves out from that. But yes, on that account is noted about those who were running to go scoop fuel. How can we continue to learn this? Because even as just yesterday again, people said they also went, they thinking that it was fuel, but unfortunately it was a groundnut oil this time. So,
another kind of oil.
So who knows if it was fuel? It would have also been a very sad incident. But what we're really having a concern is that Nigerians should see how they can also learn lessons from. Because this is not the first time we've heard stories like tanker explosion. But Nigerians are still doing the same thing again and again. Secondly, alternative for how we can begin to transport some of our, these products. Because can we look at the timing? In the moment, sometimes people said, look, moving within the daytime is dangerous as well, owing to the fact that the road situation in the country is terrible, and can these tankers begin to be moving in the night, when people are, numbers have reduced from the street, because over 98 or 86 are still confirmed bodies have been found dead and burned. It's terrible. That would have been prevented if probably it was in the night's time, where the numbers of people out there would have been reduced,
becoming active,
and being active as well. So these are the issues we should still pay attention to, in as much as yes, we can't entirely just blame who are those who even be blamed. You blame government by construction of roads. You also blame the driver. We also blame the drivers for did they intentionally allow the tanker to fall off and all of that. We also blame the citizens who felt, that is a product, essential products, we need it. It's as costly as ₦1,000 in some places, so they are able to rush up to get it. All of that is still a blame game, but life have been lost. Can we learn lessons from the fact that life have been lost, and we should take precautions in knowing fully well that if we continue to do the same thing, we always get the life, wasted.
It's so sad. Let's also think again and realize that this is 2025. The question is, how do other countries do these things? Just before we got on air a while ago, behind cameras, Michael and I were talking. One of the things I did say was that there is nothing you want to achieve as an individual or an organization or a country that someone else has not already accomplished. What do? Learn from them, domesticate, just tweak here and there. Some years ago, I spoke with a frontline economist in this country, and he did say that things like this, we should be moved by train. You can move these problems by train, it's not rocket science, but it will appear we're not ready for that conversation as a country, right? Because, go to even some of the not so economically buoyant countries in Europe and elsewhere in the world, they do rail to move things like this. Nigeria is one of the countries where you still find all of these. Look at the state of the trucks themselves. They are in rickety states. Have you seen them on the road? How they swing from side to side? We're not even talking about the ones that fall sideways now. These are things that should give us concern. But there's always this knee-jerk reaction to the way we live as a government, which we have sustained for several decades. But there's no better time to break that jinx and disrupt that deadly process than now.
A lot of concern. Well, in a way, who are those for us who are going to really point fingers to blame at the South incidents? It's just for us as Nigerians to really have to learn lessons moving forward. But our hearts really goes out. Condolences to the family of those who were the victim. Everyone, we will continue to track that development and bring you to speed some of the responses of government in respect to that, other details on our bulletin, which coming to you at the top of the hour. To stay with us, we'll be right back with AM News.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper review, latest news with experts on key global issues.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
welcome to Air News live on Global Television, coming to you from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Idika Michael. A quick reminder that Global TV is on DSTV channel 365 and StarTimes channel 276 and free to air on Nicom Stars. We begin by informing that President Tinubu has called a meeting with Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara and the leaders of Ogoniland at the presidential villa in Abuja. Present at the meeting was the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Mele Kyari, the Minister of Environment, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Idris Mohammed, the Minister of Regional Development, Abubakar Momo, and the National Security Advisor, NSA Malam Anuhuri. Although the agenda of the meeting was not made public, it may not be connected to the Ogoni Clean Hub and resumption of oil exploration in Ogoniland. Our federal government has congratulated U.S. President Donald Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States of America. Our federal government, in a message conveyed by the spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Kemebe Biamfak, stressed the strong and historic ties between the two nations, highlighting their shared cooperations in areas such as good governance, sustainable development, and the fight against terrorism and violent extremism. It expressed Nigeria's commitment to strengthening its strategic partnership with the United States under President Trump's leadership, intending to advance the interests and well-being of both nations' citizens. Also, President Tinubu has approved the Federal Polytechnic in Gwarimpa, one of the largest estates in the nation's capital, Abuja, which is to be named after him. In a letter addressed to the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, and the Minister of Education, Tunji Alausa, the federal government approved the establishment of Bola Ahmed Tinubu Polytechnic Gwarimpa to promote technological, vocational, and entrepreneurial training in line with the national policy on education. The latest signed by the Education Minister requested the FCT Minister to suggest the proposed location for the temporary and permanent site in Gwarimpa for the takeoff of the institution, noting that approval will be given based on the report to be presented by the technical team from the Federal Ministry of Education and National Board of Technical Education after inspecting the recommended locations. Meanwhile, the federal government has launched the National Health Fellows Program designed to engage young Nigerians in improving the public health. Spread across all 34 local government areas, the government invites applications from individuals aged between 25 and 35 with a particular focus on health-related disciplines, social sciences, and IT. The president said individuals will be remunerated and equipped with appropriate tools to drive positive change in the health sector as part of the government's strategy to improving the health sector by enhancing the skills and energy of young people who will receive stipends and necessary resources for their work. Away from that, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project SERAP has given President Bola Tinubu 48 hours to reverse the recent 50% telecoms tariff hike. The SERAP in a statement said failure to do so by the Tinubu's administration means they will be charged in court. Recall that the Nigeria Communications Commission (NCC) on January 20 had approved the raising of telecoms tariff by 50% in what shareholders believe was approved in a bid to improve the telecom services. Kaduna State High Court again denied ex-chief of staff to former Governor Nasir Rufai of Kaduna State, Alhaji Bashir Bello. The court ordered that he be sent back to remand in a correctional facility after being charged with a 10-count bordering on alleged money laundering, embezzlement, and stealing. When the case came up for admission before Justice Aliyu, the 10 charges were read to the hearing of the defendant who pleaded not guilty. Now, the National Conference in Canada regarding the position of Northern women on the proposed tax reform bills by President Bola Tinubu, experts say there are many lapses to address, and despite some modifications to the bill. Our correspondent Idris Jibril was there, and our report from Kano.
Organized by the Women's Wing of the Coalition of Northern Groups, this national conference is to deliberate on how women are affected by the controversial tax reform bill in Nigeria. Women from the 19 northern states and the Federal Capital Territory argued that the bills do not in any way represent their aspiration in the region.
Well, my expectations are high, and like I said, I asked them. Most of them do not really know much about the tax reform bill. But to the glory of God Almighty, they are now aware that issues concerning the tax reform bill is very important that their voices are heard. So I believe that after this program, I'm going to get feedbacks, positive feedbacks from them. Their contributions is going to help when I tender my reports.
Although several modifications have been made to erase doubts in the minds of some Nigerians regarding the provisions of the bills, these people argued that the need for lawmakers to ensure transparency is crucial. At the end of this conference, expert believes that women will be fully mobilized to further understand the role they are expected to play in ensuring that the bill does not affect the overall well-being of Nigerians.
Nigerians are not enjoying. People are suffering. Over 90% of Nigerians are suffering with the current policies, ill policies that are designed by this administration. Unpopular policies, inhuman policies, ungodly policies that are only meant to make Nigerians to suffer. This is the situation we are. Actually, we went to Flato last week. We interacted with the market women and so many other women groups. But unfortunately, they were saying it very clearly. They never knew what the tax reform bill is all about. Nobody even taught them what is the tax reform bill. They never knew anything about it, and they were convinced beyond any doubt that there is consolidation of levies. That's why I said there is difference between tax and levies. Nobody should deceive you by telling you there is consolidation of taxes. Levy is clearly different, and levy is what stopped market women in Nigeria.
Those in attendance include the chairman of the Council of Ulama, Sheikh Ibrahim Khalil, leader of the Coalition of Northern Groups, Nastura Asher, among other notable Nigerians. From Kano, Idris Jibrin reporting for Global Television News.
And also in the news, the Nigerian Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative has endorsed the 2024 tax reform bill currently being debated at the National Assembly. An 18 memo on its position signed by the Executive Secretary Orji Ogbonnaja and addressed to the leadership of the National Assembly and the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, which is leading the reform process, identified areas needed to improve the policy gaps in the bill. And now the police command in Akwa Ibom has commenced sensitization campaign to ensure public compliance with the directive on vehicle owners to obtain the third-party insurance. The Commissioner of Police in Akwa Ibom, Baba, has already said in Uyo that the campaign will deepen public understanding and acceptance of the policy. He said that the police in Akwa Ibom was fully ready to enforce the directive of the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Ebertugan, adding that the third-party insurance was a compulsory legal requirement for all vehicle owners to operate their vehicles on the public roads. Also in the news, the Pediatric Association of Nigeria has raised the alarm over the increasing rate of malnutrition among the children in Nigeria, stating that it is a direct or underlying factor in about 45% of child death in the country. She disclosed this in Gombe State at the Association 56th Annual General Meeting and Scientific Conference. Now, the professor of pediatrics and the consultant Patriotic Considology noted that the recent challenges of exchange rate, high cost of fuel, and the low wages have gently reduced the financial capability of many families, leading to low food security and inadequate food supply. You're watching the live broadcast of AM News here on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation capital. When AM News returns, Corporate Affairs Commission registers 100,000 points of sale operators. We shall bring you those details as well as that of foreign and sport stories right after this break. Please stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. Another business news. World Bank Group has announced a 30 months department of two Nigerian companies alongside their managing director and chief executive officer Norman Didam for the fraudulent, collusive and corrupt practices linked to the National Social Safety Net project in Nigeria. The World Bank disclosed that the project aimed to provide the targeted financial assistance support of vulnerable households was compromised due to several unethical practices during the 2018 procurement and a subsequent contract process. The bank says that Viva Atlantic Limited, Technology House Limited, and Didam misrepresented a conflict of interest in their bids and accessed the confidential tender information from public officials. Now, the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria has opposed the proposed increase in the value-added tax rate as outlined in the federal government tax reform bills. And now they're warning that the move could worsen the economic hardship faced by Nigerians. The federal government had proposed a VAT hike from the current 7.5% to 10%, with the 12.5% and ultimately 15%, and moved the TUC described as ill-timed and detrimental to the welfare of citizens who are already grappling with inflation, unemployment, and the soaring cost of living. Speaking during the press briefing here in Abuja following the Union's National Executive Council meeting held on November 26, 2024, TUC President Fesu says that maintaining the VAT rate at 7.5% was crucial to safeguarding Nigerians from additional financial pressure. And our Registrar General of the Corporate Affairs Commission, Asani Magaji, has disclosed that 100,000 points of sale operators have officially registered their businesses with the Commission under the POS formalization project. And now, according to the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, there are over 1.9 million POS terminals deployed by the merchants and individuals nationwide. Last week, adding inter-house enforcement and compliance training for state offices, the Registrar General stated that the current number of the registration is a significant shortfall compared to the 250,000 registrations that were expected from the initiative, which was launched on July 7, 2024 and concluded on September 5, 2024. Now, Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council decided to establish a commercial court and the sub-national councils as part of effort to improve the country's business climate. And now the project manager of the Secretariat, Hamiya, disclosed this initiative in a statement highlighting a 2025 outlook document. The council noted that the establishment of a nationwide presence was central to the 2025 work plan to drive the ease of doing business chiefly through the sub-national reforms and the commission will call for easier business arbitration. Digital token known as Trump Dollar, which launched on Friday, saw a price jump from less than $10 on Saturday to a peak of $24.59. Now, before adjusting slightly on Monday, according to Trump reported, the surge in the Trump's dollar value came just ahead of Trump's return to the White House. The token's rise drew attention, with trading volume hitting billions of dollars as trading at about 13.45, and the coin was trading at over $46.93, giving it to a market of $9.4 billion. Now, the foreign scene, despite suggestions, U.S. President Donald Trump's return will overshadow the World Economic Forum that began on the same day as his inauguration in Washington. The forum's world president, Butch Brandy, says that the president has brought the fresh interest in annual gathering of business and political leaders.
I need to come to
U.S. President Donald Trump has vowed to seize the Panama Canal, imploring that Russia is to make a deal on the Ukraine. In only his first hours back, as President Trump also moved to withdraw the United States from the Paris Climate Accord, and the World Health Organization halted Cuba's delisting from the state sponsors of terrorism blacklist, and symbolically but provocatively announced he was rechristening the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of America. In the same vein, the World Health Organization, WHO, has expressed regret over the announcement that the United States intends to withdraw from the organization, and the global health body urged the U.S. to reconsider the decision, emphasizing a crucial role in protecting the global health, including the Americans. And the organization highlighted its work in addressing the root causes of disease, strengthening health system, and responding to the health emergencies, often in challenging environments where others cannot operate. Meanwhile, American politician, diplomat, attorney Marco Rubio has been sworn in as the United States Secretary of State. Swearing was conducted by the Vice President James Vance, and now in his interview, Rubio is expected to play a pivotal part in shaping U.S. foreign policy, particularly concerning relations with China and Latin America. At least 66 people have been killed in a fire that engulfed the popular Turkish ski resort hotel, leaving some to jump out of windows. The fire broke out at the wooden club 13-story Grand Canal Hotel at 3:27 local time during a busy holiday period when 234 people were staying there. An initial total of 10 deaths was raised significantly in a house after the fire by the Turkish Interior Ministry, and at least 2 people died after trying to jump to safety. We now turn attention to sport. Former Chelsea star John Obi Mikel has landed in Istanbul for discussion with Nigerian forward Victor Osimhen, who continues to attract intense transfer interest. Now the Galatasaray striker, currently on loan from Napoli, has been linked with Manchester United, Arsenal and Chelsea as the January transfer deadline. Mikel, who remains a passionate advocate for Chelsea, has been vocal about his desire to see Osimhen wear the Blues jersey, as Arsenal are actively exploring ways to secure the 26-year-old services after Manchester United's £9 million bid was rejected. Manchester City has announced they had completed the signing of teenage defender Vitor Reis from the Brazilian club Palmeiras for a reported part of a £29.6 million. And under 19-year-old Brazilian youth national has signed a 4.5-year deal with the Premier League champions, and I expressed his excitement to continue and to join the Manchester City, one of the biggest clubs in the world. And I said working with Pep Guardiola is something every young player wants to do. Adding that he knows Guardiola can help him to develop into the player he can be. And our Nigeria's junior female Yellow Green celebrated a historic moment with the 2025 ICC Under-19 Women's World Cup in Malaysia, clinching the first ever win at the tournament with a thrilling of 2-run victory over the third-playing nation New Zealand. And after winning Sarawak, delaying their opening game against Samoa on Saturday, the Nigerian team finally took center stage and despite another rain delay, pushing the start by over 2 hours and reducing the match for the over pair side. Nigerians resilient shone through. That's the package here on AM News, coming to you live from Nigeria's capital. Reminder that we are on DSTV channel 365 and start times channel 276. Free to air Nikam Sat. You can follow and watch all the rest of our news and update at Global TV NG. On behalf of the entire production team, thank you for joining us here on AM News. We'll be continuing with the rest of the program and the morning show after the break. Please do well to stay with us.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
Thank you everyone for staying with us. Quite a number of things going on in Nigeria at this point in time. The week has already been very eventful, even though this is midweek, as we call it, Wednesday. The inauguration of President Trump, Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States, has been an ongoing conversation. Just yesterday, like we did a while ago on the Air News, you could hear from Davos in the course of the World Economic Forum, how the stakeholders are saying that even though the inauguration of the president coincided with the very start of the global event, he didn't cast a shadow on it, he didn't take off the shine, instead he even gave it some momentum. All right, because as it stands right now, it will appear that there's concern across every corner of the world as to how relations with the U.S. will be under President Trump. Of course, right from the point where he took over office, where he was sworn in, it was a plethora of executive orders being signed, including one that has become an obstacle or become like a hard nut to crack, as they call it, which is the birthright citizenship factor in the United States. But back at home, Nigeria's foreign ministry has also reached out to congratulate the president and reiterated the mutually rewarding ties between the United States and Nigeria. Now, looking at the way Trump related with the whole world, including Nigeria, between 2017 and 2021, when he had his first term, what should we be expecting this time? I mean, the man has another 4 years in office. Is he going to be the same Trump, or one maybe slightly varied from the one we had seen the other time during his first term? Yesterday, I had a guest here together with whom we had a very riveting conversation about this development. I remember saying that this looks more like Trump 2.0, and that has become pretty much the case right now, because the man is still doubling down on the same exact issues as he had done in the course of his first term. Michael Edikon, you had your own moments discussing the Trump presidency on Monday evening on Big Talk. And what were some of the talking points or the highlights for you and your guest?
I mean, very interestingly, a man who got prepared for the job, and he knows what he's doing, and the man who is not really afraid of the next election, because it's really unique, because Trump is at the office this time. He's not afraid of the policies he's taking and the decision he's making. If it means well for you, if it means well for your feelings, if it means well for you, for him, he's determined to get America work. But that grammar, getting America working again, and all of those concerns have been misinterpreted. To what end? Well, issues of migrations. He has pushed, and greatest problem of America to the migrants. It looks that migrants are really are those who are the receiving end of some of these tough policies. But the people of America are just optimistic because he's a man who is not in anywhere coming to look at the faces of anyone before taking a decision. So he has taken the decision from day one. I mean, he said he's going to sign so many executive orders, and he didn't actually miss those words. He actually should need to actions by signing those things. But a concern about how the world are perceiving all of this. So we had interaction, and it looks at what the world leaders are really afraid of is the fact that after after America under Trump, after the 4 years of America under Trump, what will be the fate of America moving forward? Yes, he will say America has all it possesses and all of those concerns, but would they continue to be in isolation with the rest of the world? Are they trying to abandon, third world countries? Are they trying to isolate themselves from blocs? You've seen them threatening actions against, withdrawal from the World Health Organization. When we look at, we also understand the importance of World Health Organization even to the American people as well. We've also seen them threatening actions in many of the bodies. The US had membership with. So the question many have asked is, after America under Trump, what will be the fate of America? Will the rest of the world now resort to looking at putting themselves together, against America, or would they feel that, America, you want to be on a solution, you want to be alone, allow us to also see. So, but in all of that, it also raises the question how, for instance, coming back home, Africa can continue to pull back themselves and see how Africa can develop Africa. The continuous dependence on the Western world for our economy, for our health, and all of those concerns hasn't helped us for many years now. So can we now begin to look inward? What can we do? The tangible things that we can do from our end to see how we can get our own continent work. We've also seen a very embarrassing moment where we see that Africa, some Africans are illegally, having their stay in America and all of those European, all of those Western countries, which has continued to spark comparison. Those that feels, look, people are running from Africa just to be able to, to come for a better, greener pasture. They are also actively contributing to the economy of the U.S. If you look at the role Nigeria are playing, in all the sectors as well. So we are not even just coming to depend on the country, we are also contributing to the development of this country. Can African leaders and African continents stay back to look at, if we have all of this resource person, if we have a resourceful population like this who are going out to contribute to the economy of the U.S., what happens back home? And these people given a chance of the day, either in government, at the state level, at the country level, at the local government level. So all of these are concerns. We've seen that he has already declared a $500 billion AI investment in technology. Just recently, I think we had some experts from AI and investors and CEOs who were there to visit him. I think that is really the first visit he has actually had from our investors who came in and said, we're investing over $500 billion, for your first 2 years in office and all of that. So he has a promise to, cushion the effect of the inflation as well. He has a promise to get this done and all of that. But in all of that, we're looking at that is US. Can we also pay attention to fixing our own, problems and crises? So people said the inaugural speech was one-sided. It was a threat to the war. It was just how bossly, talking tough and hard on the war. It wasn't also looking at the human angle, the human side of who a leader should be. So I've also seen the former Minister of Foreign Affairs who also, when he was granted an interview, also reacting to a couple of what the development so far. He said that inaugural speech was not a presidential inaugural speech. He went on to even said, it was even the worst inaugural speech of the U.S. president. But these are people's opinion about what the man is doing, what the man has said. But in all of that, we give it to the man, for the fact that he has actually came all this while just to get to that place, and also having the heart to take the decisions that sometimes, are likely not going down well with a lot of persons. Couple of them.
Yeah, quite frankly, Michael, Donald Trump has been described as unconventional, as a human being, not just a president, right? He's been referred to by some people as eccentric, erratic, and what have you. But the fact of the matter is, the man has attributes that are not traditional, some of them not even presidential. And he has never been, secretive about this. I mean, these are things that are in the open about him. These are he has always lived. And there are people also argue that these attributes, these traits make him authentic because he doesn't have to fake anything. I remember in the heat of campaign 2016, of course, he was campaigning to get to the White House for his first term back then. Two elderly women, most likely grandmothers, were shopping for grocery. A reporter interviewed both of them to say, who would you vote for between Trump and Hillary Clinton? Both of them said they would vote for Trump. And the reporter went on to probe, why would you vote Trump against Hillary Clinton, who's a woman? And you're supposed to have some gender bias, at least support a woman, that sort of thing. And one of them said, well, I'll vote for Trump because he speaks from his heart, not from his head. The other one said, I would vote. Okay, then the reporter asked a third question. Have you not seen, heard the leaked tape of how he was talking, saying unprintable things about women and all of that. The other woman said, well, I'll still vote for him in spite of all this because he's not running to be the Pope, he's running to be the US president. So you realize that there are people whose convictions align with the Trump thinking as well. But America has not been the same since Trump became president in 2017. And now he's back in the White House, and you're asking yourself the whole time, has his thinking, has his philosophy changed from the Trump of 2017 to 2021, from the Trump that just took office less than 48 hours ago? And Africa has a role to play in answering that question by the way it develops itself, by the way it plans, by the way it leverages data, by the way it attacks problems, tackles issues around health, around education, around tech, around business, and all of those indices that drive development and growth across the world. Look at the HDI, the Human Development Index. Look at an average country in Asia compared with Africa. Look at an average country in Europe compared with Africa. Look at an average country in South America compared with Africa. So Africa must know that their destiny ultimately is not tied to Donald Trump or who becomes the president of the US. You must look inward and fix your problems. Ask yourself, in the 70s, what did Singapore do differently? Singapore had been to Nigeria, the records are there, to ask for help from Nigeria. That was how bad it was. But today, that conversation has moved within the course of, say, 5 decades. The Prime Minister, former Prime Minister of Singapore, now late, blessed memory, Lee Kuan Yew, did write a book about moving from a third world to first world, and Singapore has shown to the rest of the world, particularly all 54 countries on this continent, of how leadership should be provided. But the problem we have is we continue to play the ostrich and live in denial, and until we break that jinx of living in denial as a continent, and in particular as a country like Nigeria that has come to be seen as the beacon of hope, as the light of the continent, we just keep getting stuck.
It takes us back to even the 1970s foreign policy, saying Africa as the centerpiece of Nigeria foreign policy, where we are prioritizing how we can get the continent working. Remember when we had all the discovery of oil and all of those concerns? Yes, we are the interest of Africa. So we are trying to also play the big brother role in terms of getting the region together, and even also assisting some of these countries within our continent. But has that unity been sustained? Because it raises the questions of Africa, the unity within the continent. Are we together? We've also seen some actions, trade barriers, even within the same continent, having all of those concerns and issues. So it boils back to the fact that Africa must begin to see that they can only be the one to help themselves. Yes, the Western world will always have the loans, we always have the grants, we always have the assistance to offer, but in all of that we've received, looking back, how have we really gotten to develop our continent? Are those IMF loans and all of those grants that have been given to us really making us better? Have we called the issues of corruption? If we have other countries giving death penalties for corrupt practices, embezzlement of public funds, what is happening within Africa? We're paying attention to the loopholes of government funds and all of those concerns. So these are the issues that pretty much that if we cannot get this addressed, we always get to the point of having the competition, not really scratching the conversation. But let's get back home to the National Assembly. The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs are seeking for over 260 billion naira
to provide jobs.
To provide jobs and also get to cushion the effect of hardship and the problems of Nigeria. It sparks a lot of concern because when we said what happened to the previous investment towards the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs?
You see, they say once bitten twice shy. Others say once bitten forever shy. But I don't know for how long you're going to be shy, but once you're bitten, in the manner of speaking, you definitely will be shy. That ministry has come undone on a number of occasions. That ministry has shown that it needs re-engineering on the inside. It needs a lot of fixing. In fact, it requires a total overhaul as it stands right now. We've had two ministers. The first two ministers of that ministry have not been able to prove themselves. They've not been able to show that they can provide leadership and take that ministry from point A to point B. And it even paints women in bad light, and that's sad because we've seen women brilliant with competence, with experience, who have done wonders for us in this country across different spheres, at least right from Obasanjo days, for example. We've seen them shining light in the room and just changing the narrative for the better in this country across different areas of human endeavor. But when you now have a ministry where you had the first minister, you had the second minister, they're having the same issues around grants, around unethical practices, around corruption. It gives you some sort of sleepless night. For some people, they would even say it's nightmarish when you have such experiences. And they have even now made the work of the current minister a little more difficult than it should be. Because at the end of the day, you're wondering, what is this current minister going to do differently from the other ones? Because there's a nasty trajectory with which the ministry is associated, and that in itself is extremely very disturbing. It's not so much about the numbers, the volume of money. It's about what the vision is. Is this current minister clear about where they are going with the ministry? We can give you the money in the world. We can just altogether give you the entire budget and say, run with it. But the question is, by the time the 1 year period cycles out, what will you have achieved with the money? So let's be clear. What is the mandate of the ministry?
And also concerned about the statistics of poorness of the poor, and also
and the 75,000 naira.
75,000 naira, because you look at the issues of our population. The last count, 2006, when we had census, government of the last administration were making efforts for that. For that census to be done, but up to today, there was even a takeoff. There was about a takeoff grant that was given to the National Population Commission for that preparations. We haven't heard any update from that. Nigerians have not really prepared, knowing fully well that without data, because we make mention of the other time, we must be driven by data. Because without data, we can't have accurate allocations. So sometimes we are having ministries saying that they are giving 70,000 to poorest of the poor. And the question is, who are the poorest of the poor? What number? How many are they in Nigeria? So we are still assuming that the population of over 200 million plus. But do we really get the population right and all of those things? These are the issues that I feel the government first ought to pay attention to these things, because a government that came on board, for over more than a year now, ought to also understand that there's a need to get data so that whatever actions they are taking, look at the proposed subsidy removal. Government have tried to give out palliative, they've tried even grant. They gave 25,000 the other time to still do social intervention. But we are still in Nigeria, still saying we haven't seen anything, we haven't gotten anything, and all of that. I haven't really had to have interaction with someone that said, I got this and all of that. So it now makes government always feel that as if they're lying with their policies and they're not always true to the word. So, but when there are data, the importance of data as well. So it will get all of these things well documented, and actions are being driven by some of this data. And there's a really need for us to go back to that conversation about census.
Very important, but we hope we do get it right this time. It's not just about what is allocated to the National Populations Commission. It's also about how we want to go about this. We need to give Nigerians a reason to trust our data. That's the point in all of this. Because we don't want to be in a place after all this while, almost 2 decades of not having a census, and then we eventually have one with all of the tens of billions of investment, human resources plowed in it, and then you're still having misgiving, you're still having misconception, you are still skeptical as to the authenticity, veracity, and authority of such data. We can't reinvent the wheel, that's what they say. We need to look at how other countries are doing it. Even organizations, private organizations, small, medium, large, how are they doing it? How are corporations using data to drive narratives? I did a special report in 2015 at the twilight of the SDGs, the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, as we used to call them. One consultant in the health sector told me that one of the problems in that sector is that the bulk of the monies used in driving health-specific projects comes from international donors. Now, what these donors do is that they don't use our data. They bring their independent tools into the country, do their own analysis, collect their own data, spend the money, put the money where the amount is, and then they get their data and determine where they want to invest in the health sector. So if the Nigerian authorities told them, for example, malaria is our biggest problem, they say, no, we don't believe malaria is our biggest problem. It's cholera that's our biggest problem. If you tell them, no, it's HIV/AIDS that's our biggest problem in the health sector, they say, no, it's not HIV/AIDS that's our biggest problem. It's polio that's the biggest problem. So it's a large principle. He who pays the piper dictates the music. Let's get our data first. Let's get it right at that level, and we can continue to make other forms of investments going forward.
The Nigerians are still on the beat to get all working in Nigeria. The first federal government made that move as well, just also topping the agenda of the meeting with Ogoni leaders. But away from that effort, what more can we do to manage the oil that we already have? Because there have also been cases about issues of oil theft in the Niger Delta region and some part of this nation. How can we continue to manage what we have and the blessed resources that we have, and to get to better the life of many Nigerians, in which the primary responsibility of government is protecting lives and the property of everyone? Our property really serving the hands of government? Are people, non-state actors, taking advantage of government or taking advantage of our resources, to cater away just for personal consumptions? It's still a major issues and concern. But tonight, on the show this morning, we'll be joined by a senior energy consultant who will be x-raying that concern about issues of oil within the Niger Delta and the call of the president for peace to reign in Ogoni, which are also a major stakeholders in respect to resolving the crisis within that region. We'll be joining us virtually, of course, we'll also head voice to that conversation. Do stay with us on the show. Once we return, the program continues. Dr. Wisdom, senior energy consultant and analyst, joins us virtually this morning. Thanks so much, Doctor, for sparing some of your hours, your early morning hours with us. And let's quickly get your take from this visit. I understand issues of oil exploitation has been a concern within the Niger Delta region. Some said we must also pay attention to resolving the communal clashes, the problems within the community, and all of that. And some said the communities are demanding for compensations, equitable, also making them feel sense of belonging. How would you rate the effort of the president towards this matter?
Thanks very much. I think it's very comprehensive in nature, looking at making sure that in the first instance there is a sense of inclusion from the community. I think that's really important, because look at the whole Petroleum Industry Act. What it's come to do is to recognize the fact that you need to create a host community build provisions to create that engendering environment for community collaboration as part of the oil and gas exploration. And if the communities feel disenfranchised in some form, shape, or manner, then they will not take ownership of the installations, and they will not take ownership of the entire project itself. So what the president is doing, on one hand, We are, growing our portfolios by ensuring that we are now optimizing our production. We are also looking at exploring new frontiers. We're also looking at, sanctioning new projects. For example, the Bonga North $5 billion project. But the president recognizes that all of these will not yield anything if there is no intentionality in bringing the host communities involved, and so has moved proactively to say, look, how do we get a lasting solution, or perhaps build a long-lasting and implementable template that we can then apply all over where we have community issues. And that's very important, because I think that is one area that we're lacking. If the communities take ownership, then we wouldn't have the persistent issue of oil theft, which is at some point has been responsible for a decline of over 30% of Nigeria's oil production.
Good morning. We appreciate you joining us. But let's get right to it. By the late 1950s, it was already established scientifically and otherwise that there was a large deposit of crude, black gold, like they call it, in this country. It's been several decades down the line. We're still discussing some of the issues. Experts like yourself will say are elementary. Ogoni cleanup, for example, has been here for a while. I understand we won a case off the shores of Nigeria in that regard. While we still have former President Muhammadu Buhari in office, we're talking about some 20 billion naira cleanup fund for Ogoni land. How is it that we are still cycling around these issues in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, you're absolutely spot on. We did not take this as a very important action item for all this while. And I'm going to even, just to, buttress my point, I'm going to bring something to bear. Up until the enactment of the Petroleum Industry Act, there wasn't a very clear provision on even plug and abandonment, which simply talks about how you intend to return the facility to its original condition when you have finished taking out the resources. And why is that important? Because it has become a recurring issue where we find that international oil and gas companies are about to divest in their investments, but there is the question of who is to put the funds available for the eventual cleanup of these assets, because a lot of those assets, for example, are getting older, and in other climes, the older assets at some point need to be plugged and abandoned, and they usually save money from day one. And the reason is this: as you go on in the life of a facility, the actual potential of that facility declines over time. So it is not at the end of that decline where your operating cost is now almost eroding your profit margins that you begin to put out money for plug and abandonment, which is really expensive. So just in a nutshell, we have been thinking about all of these not in a very proactive manner, in a very reactive manner. And it has come to a point where a lot of it is biting us because we haven't actually put that concerted effort towards ensuring that those environmental concerns are being addressed. It is a bit later in the day that we have now looked at that and then trying to address it. So we're playing catch up. And so what I'm trying to explain is, because of the last, the kind of relaxed manner that we've approached the entire environmental concern, that is why we've had it linger for over 60 years. And up until recently was when we had the laws that would be able to back us in terms of putting all the, imperatives that are required to ensure that the environments are cleaned up, both during the operations and at the end of the facility life.
It's Niger Delta as a whole. We understand the role entirely of the Niger Delta in getting some of these things where the state will also have the discovery and some spots of oil as well. Because now the conversation might not just be towards Ogoni. I mean, can we just also extend it? Because I've also seen some communities in the Niger Delta have the same agitations, still even standing with the miscreants to also, be stealing our oil and also covering them in the communities and all of those concerns. Now that we have the PIA and all of those, proper documentation and description of that what it ought to address, how can this be implemented? Because implementation is an issue right there. Why we clearly, being signed in 2021, and this is 2025. We haven't also feel the impact and swift responses in terms of implementation. What is your call and what is your concern?
Right. The first call and concern I have is, let's go to the host community bill, for example. The host community bill, I have a big concern in the way it was well intended, but the way it was designed and how it has affected the outcomes. First and foremost, the host community bill was written in a way that the companies would be the one to select the people on the host community trust fund that would be the representative of the community. Now, underline the word. The company who, of course, have their own interest that is perhaps very different from that of the community are the ones selecting representatives of the communities in the trust fund. And so you found out that with that, how many trust funds are actually being funded and how many project executions are going on as a result of this? This is part of the question. So we've had 2021 till date, and we haven't had much traction in that direction. That's a real concern, just like you've highlighted. So what do I think from an implementation standpoint? I think we need to just ask ourselves, are we ready to do this or not? The second thing is, we shouldn't just leave this by chance and say, well, we're going to be banking on the ethics of the companies that are going to operate this, for example, the trust fund. There should be some sort of oversight with punitive actions from some regulator. Someone should be looking at it, taking stock, reporting it to the public to let them know who are stewarding some of those host community inclusion goals and who is not. Because until we do that, what typically happens is that we enact the laws, we don't have a way to implement it properly, and then people just go on doing exactly what they're doing till today. You can't go to most areas and say this project was sanctioned as a result of the host community funds. So why is this important? Because it's all bits and pieces of a body language or a signature that is indicative of how much we care about the host community. It's not just about the cleanup. It's not about the environmental degradation. We've recognized the lacuna, as the lawyers would say it, and we have commenced a way to be able to address some of these concerns. However, how well have we designed a pathway to it? What is the monitoring and the reporting mechanisms to ensure that people are doing what they ought to be doing? And also, most importantly, how are we structuring funding in place to sustainably implement some of these projects that will achieve two purposes? Purpose number one is to make sure that those degradations are addressed, however slowly, but of course progressively. That's the first one. The second issue that we have to address is, because of the opportunity costs, right? For all of these years, there has been a lot of oil exploration activities, and the host communities have somehow found out that they've lost out in opportunity costs. If there's a degradation, for example, in Ogoniland, the fishing and the aquatic life would be affected. So the whole aim of the host community fund provisions is meant to restore some of these losses and make sure that where there was an opportunity cost to the communities, that they regain it. Where we were hoping that there would be fishery and some sort of agricultural activities that may lead to funding for maybe a hospital project for the community, that the fund would make available some of these assets, facilities, infrastructure to engender development. And so those are the two core areas we ought to be doing, but there needs to be somebody who is going to be looking over the shoulders of the oil companies and telling them, no, you're not doing this, and then of course reporting that consensuously to the public.
So we can't have this conversation without some continual reference to the PIA as a very pivotal factor or piece of legislation in this regard. We have seen the PIA bring a bit of, some bunch of reforms into the sector. But let's talk about some of the issues, some of the concerns with the PIA. Yes, for every piece of legislation in the world, anywhere in the world, you can always go back and do a review, remove a few items, introduce a few new items, and what have you. But look, let's talk about how that. Some persons have said not much has changed at the community level between when there was no PIA and now that the PIA is in force.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Just like I said, it's the lack of enforcement. And the truth of the matter is, for every time that we have a law or policy direction and it's completely ignored, we set a new precedence, which is where I get very worried. The PIA, of course, has, let's explain how it works. We have a PIA that brings some broad reforms in terms of the direction of reform. But those PIAs, that PIA rather, has to be implemented or operationalized using regulations. So it's not that the law itself should have every single bit of instructive nature. This is how it should be done. This is who should do this. It is the regulators that would then sit down and write regulations that would then become the vehicle that will convey the intentionality of the PIA. And this is what is lacking. So you're absolutely right when there's a concern that we are not implementing. And this is the issue. A lot of time we have fantastic intents, right, on our legal framework, but when it comes to implementing it, then we find we're found wanting, and we're asking ourselves, did we really understand it, or did we just pay experts to write very clever words and put together very good intent, but we clearly do not understand how we're going to be able to implement it much successfully. The PIA is, of course, we understood what has why the PIA had to be done, and it has had very good successes. Just like I'd like to point out, clearing the whole issue about who is a regulator and who is the operator when it comes to NNPCL is very clear right now. The PIA has also come in to bring some frameworks for developing the oil sector, for which the president has also done a build on that to say the presidential directive on oil and gas reforms. The oil and when we now go to the room for more improvement, I would like to say is the host community bill. There's clearly something that needs to be done. So what can we do? We can have the regulators themselves go back and look at the host community bill. I'm not entirely sure whose prerogative is going to be, but they need to sit down and look at how do we make this to be operationalized, how do we set the penalties that are going to drive this, and how do we even measure it in the first instance. You're clearly absolutely right, it's lacking, and perhaps if we think about in terms of the energy that has to be put in, maybe the federal government is prioritizing first at that point trying to get more production. So the upstream regulators were really working hard with regulations to create that effect. And then we now have to go to the downstream quickly to make sure we're self-sufficient. And I think that they're tackling those items in a kind of a list format. So they've gone down to the host community, realizing that if no matter what you do, if the host communities are not included, then there will be a sabotage. And so I think that's what they're doing at the moment. And we only hope that they take on board some of these, ideas that we've posited to make sure that when they put out regulations to operationalize this, that it comes out with the desired effect.
For Michael Johnson, I was going to ask you, we talk about these issues most times, and it's as if we're running the circles. Let's talk about the international oil companies for a second. When you look at these developments as nasty and as worrisome as they are we holding IOCs accountable enough?
Yeah, we are, but the KPIs are very different. So in a country, right, let's put it this way, in a country where we are mostly struggling, right, we're trying to just have the basic funding to meet our needs and all of that, you find out that the key performance indicators are skewed more towards how much money are they bringing? Do they pay their taxes? How can we make them happy so they don't get up and leave? It's also very difficult a conversation, especially when you're thinking in line of the fact that a lot of these IOCs are saying the more you require from us from an environmental standpoint, the more it adds to our cost of oil production. Because if you think about it, let's put a scenario in place where an IOC is not, of course, having to take care of the environment or put any of those funds towards the environmental, care. that would reduce how much they have to spend versus when they have to do it. So when they're already telling you, oh, the cost of doing business is already high in Nigeria, if we do this, it will become unprofitable, we may think to divest, then that is when we begin to sort of reduce our KPIs on the environmental side, but up our KPIs on the production side of things. But you're absolutely right that I think we've come to a point where we need to balance both. But because at the end of the day, if we do not take care of the environment, then we would have all theft issues that will also mean there are losses that needs to be accommodated within the entire operational margins of the IOCs, which will inadvertently increase the cost of their production. So it's a very interwoven situation that we need to delicately handle. And it is very important that accountability is not. Accountability has nothing to do with just enforcement. Accountability, as I've explained, has to do with profitability if you look at it from the grand scheme of things.
Just a follow-up to your last comment, because those that said it looks like there's also issues of political resource control and all of those concerns. But in a way of accountability, we have the federal government, the state, and the local government, and it's always looking at the fact that some are leaving just this fight, for the federal government. The federal government, through their wisdom, had to set up a Niger Delta Development Commission to pay attention to all of those aspects that have been raised by the host communities in the way of addressing the problems of the Niger Deltas. But what are the states also doing on their end, to protect just common resources of the people? Because, there was a recent approval by the last administration giving out some of the Niger Delta states some derivations, funds and allocations after some time. But in a way, the state and the local government are not totally, we've not also seen effort for them to also protect, the common good of the state, the common good of the nation as well. What is your call in respect to leadership? Because there must be a political will and actions to also be taken towards this direction.
All right, so I think it is very important to understand that the call for leadership and the right form of leadership is something that we cannot overstate. However, right, let me put it this way. There's a difference, and I'm going to highlight in impact if we do things in two different ways. Let's take, for example, you have a special commission that is responsible for doing projects, and their objective function is to make sure that the welfare of the host communities are taken care of very well. That would have much of an impact in the host communities than if you said to a state governor, take some of these funds. You know why? The state governor is looking at the broad expansion of the economic prospects of his states, and not just the welfare of the particular host community that is being affected, or perhaps that brought the oil. So that's the difference. And so, of course, money has been released to the governors, and they now have the prerogative to think, okay, these are the projects I want to run with this money, right? That's going to be a slightly different effect. So ultimately, it's going to be a balance of both, right? Sometimes maybe giving the money, there'll be specific projects that have been sanctioned, as well as giving that money to say, okay, whatever remains, you can use it for the broader development goals that you have. But until you can have specific projects, you wouldn't have the desired impact, because the governor could be given money, which is perhaps maybe thoughts that he'll put it in, for example, in developing those areas, and then he may choose to put that money in developing other sectors completely in a different environment for which he feels that is more profitable. So you see, a lot of those funds are put out there for social, on a social basis, to say, okay, go develop this area that has been marginalized, or that there's been environmental degradation as well as a result of the activities and exploration and production activities. But the governor may be thinking profitability and put that money completely in a different direction that will not touch it. So Edikan is a bit, Michael, is a bit of both that I think we need to be able to handle. Accountability is core, but also the direction of that accountability is also very important.
Look, when we talk about issues around oil exploration, production, and all of the monies that come from it, it's always an elitist conversation we are having. However, we are told that crude and whatever derivatives we get from it are part of the Commonwealth for Nigerians, as well as in particular for those in this region where crude is being exploited. How do we make the profit that comes from crude exploration trickle down to the least person in the community, especially when you see the scale of pollution? I mean, there are waters, the entire environment, schools are not, healthcare is not accessible in most of these communities, and of course education is more like a hard nut to crack in this area. So how do we open up the space, bring in fairness and equity in such a way that it becomes a win-win for everyone?
Yes. Okay. I think one of the thoughts that I have in my mind is when we're designing policies, we have to look at creating, what I call the primary, secondary, tertiary linkages. And these are very important because if you think about what you can do just by yourself, for example, maybe a governor, what he can do with that money, you will not be able to touch all the communities. And sometimes there may be, even when you have money in the coffers of the state, you may find out that there are communities that are worse off even than the oil producing communities. And sometimes you might also want to create a kind of a decentralization effect from an economic standpoint to make sure that you develop other areas so that people can now move from the central area to the other areas, and so you decongest the effects on one area, the economic pressure on one area. That's one thing that the governors tend to do. But if you have an idea of creating linkages, you know that there's a central economy from oil, but you also know that you can bring investors in, give them the necessary hands for them to create the primary linkage. Primary linkage from oil upstream is, for example, a refinery. And from there, you also do a secondary linkage, for example, which could be from that refinery, could be petrochemicals that are being taken and produced from there. Primary linkage, again, could be gas industries, could also be fertilizer plants and all of that. And then the tertiary industries could be things like the hospitals that have to serve them. But until you have a strategic roadmap and a plan and then stitch them all together, you cannot create that effect. Because why? When you are able to create that effect, coupled with the fact that you're also expanding other development frontiers across your various geographical regions in your state, then already those entities will begin to do corporate social responsibility. That's a way to reach the guys at the grassroots. So we need to look at governance. The whole objective of governance as government is not really to run some of these private entities and then be able to put some of those initiatives all the way to the grassroots. What has to happen is the government would do some bets, right? But their major job is to create the enabling environment for businesses to thrive in a very interconnected way that will engender progress and also bring some of those effects trickle down to the people at the grassroots, and in a very systematic way that is very sustainable. So I think anyone thinking about governance needs to think what I can do, but more so to help the grassroots, how I can stimulate the economy that will create a ripple effect from the central economy all the way down to the person at the end. And I say this for a reason. I have lived in clients. For example, I lived in Bath in UK. I never knew the mayor of Bath. I never got anything to do with the government bursary, but because there was a systematic economy that was created, there were companies that were creating several outreach programs that I benefited from all the way to the grassroots where I lived, but I did not need to know anyone in government. So it's a mix of both, but it takes someone that clearly has a vision and understand how to stitch all of those, as I said, linkages together.
Just before we let you go, I mean, just out of context, but still within the same jurisdiction, Dangote says they're not responsible for the recent increase in the prices. I've also attributed to issues of global crude oil price. And that takes us to asking you of or your concern about how other non-oil sector can strengthen, our own currency, because we can't really have Port Harcourt refinery, let's say over 60% in operation, and one refinery that has also come to port, also Dangote refinery, local refinery as well, and there's still increase. Nigerians are worried there ought to have been reduction in the price we had the last month at over 965, some 980, but right now the price is increasing again, and Nigerians are worried. What will be the contribution of other non-oil sector in getting this thing resolved?
I think the non-oil sectors that we're talking about, one of the benefits that we'll get is when we are able to create the right quality and the right quantity for exports. I think that's very important. For example, agriculture. One of the things that is holding us back in agriculture has to do with processing and storage. Those are the two key things that we need to do. And even being able to grow some of those crops that we have strategic advantage. We have in palm oil. We have, also in yam, for example. So we can take advantage of this and grow and export it. But are we able to create the value chain that would, catalyze those export-oriented activities and get us to where we can earn money from export? That's one thing that we need to think about. The other thing is this, right? And this is to kind of sound my disappointment with the way the budget outlook is for the solid mineral sector. You cannot say you want to start creating a value-driven solid mineral sector and then remove the rent seekers, and you're only putting a paltry 9 billion naira funding towards that sector. No, it's more like we're saying one thing while we're doing another thing. One of the ways we can do, because that solid mineral sector, go to Ghana, is exactly what Ghana did before the advent of oil, and they sustained the economy on decades on that. So it has a very rich context. If we cannot get that funding required to get those minerals from there, what we ought to be doing is to run concession plans that we can then bring people in, get them to develop, get them to sell all of some of those, and then we can do a profit split, or they can pay their royalties and taxes. But what is unacceptable is to have a very huge sector like the mineral sector, solid mineral sector, that we are not tapping because we don't want to put funding, and we have not found very ingenious ways to be able to harness the value. Those two sectors are areas that we can add significant amount, grow our GDP by over 20%, and definitely sectors that we need to start thinking about very smart ways around them.
Expert and consultant, for spending some part of your morning with us today. We do hope you have a great day ahead of you.
Thank you very much. Do enjoy your day.
We'll take a quick break, everyone. We'll return shortly, and the rest of the program continues. Do stay with us. All right, this conversation is not one you can exhaust in one day, but then we do understand that Nigerians are even more concerned about the basic aspects of it, not just about who gets what, like our guest, Dr. Enang, said a while ago, the rent seekers. It's also about every Nigerian, every citizen of this country, their rights, their entitlements, and the basic things they've got to have access to. For today, what concerns every Nigerian across the board, regardless of class, is the price of petrol. So if you don't address that, everything else, I assure you, will fly past the head of citizens.
And even the telecom sector that have also, government have also approved over 50% increase
Even though the operators had asked for 100.
They had asked for 100, and Nigerians are actually at the receiving end at the end of the day. But Nigerians are also paying attention. Yes, we can't entirely blame them. They're getting diesel to fuel some of the, all of the equipment and all of those concerns, their services as well, the infrastructures, are the ones servicing them. So can we also get to the fact that pay attention to the fact that if we had reduction in the prices of diesel energy, probably they wouldn't have actually
rub off.
All of those concerns. So entirely, it's still a very big one for Nigerians, and a concern. But government should just find means of trying to subsidize, their energy, because it looks that it's not something that is really sustainable, because the inflation is really staring at the faces of Nigeria right now. And no matter, as we said, no matter what you do, no matter the cash you transfer for many Nigerians, no matter the road infrastructure you build and all of those things, if the life of a common Nigerian or the life of a Nigerian is not living to the standard of being able to have good purchasing power in getting to also buy, eat, and also take care of himself, Nigerians will still feel that nothing has been done in that regard. Because the responsibility of government is to pay attention to the life of the people. Sometimes people say the reforms is just for the future of this country. And those that will ask, at whose sacrifice, who are those that will bear it and all of that. So it's not meant for the people. So all of this should be what government and of course the private sector as well should also be paying attention in getting things worked in the country.
You know what they say about the price of petrol in Nigeria? They say whatever touches petrol in Nigeria touches everything else, because every other thing, service, goods, all right, is hinged on the direction of the price of petrol. And that's the reason when the Dangote refinery came on stream, many people thought it was the time for Nigerians to indeed heave a sigh of relief. But today we know better, because Mr. Aliko Dangote himself, the chairman of the group, is now saying that whatever you're saying regarding the hike in the pump price of petrol is none of our fault, right? We've done our beat. In fact, we've done a little extra beyond that. So the NNPCL and indeed the government will now have to take responsibility from this point on. But again, you want to ask yourself, what exactly are we not doing right in this oil and gas industry of ours for a country that is so blessed? A few months ago, sometime in 2024, the Chief Olisa Bakoba SAN, the senior lawyer, and of course someone who has a handle on economic issues, had also come out to say that Aramco, the NNPCL equivalent of Saudi Arabia, is doing these things right, at least by his own assessments. Why can't Nigeria also adopt some aspects of this sort of model, domesticate it and experiment with it for a while and see how it goes? And his points were very clear. As a matter of fact, he called a press briefing for it. We have said in the course of the show this morning that there's nothing you want to achieve in this world that someone else has not already accomplished. There's always somebody who is doing it better than you are doing. We've seen state governors go to other states to study how they are driving education, how they are driving agriculture, how they are driving health, because we all have to rub off on each other. We all have to learn from each other. The opaqueness on the NNPCL itself is a concern to every right-thinking in Nigeria, to the point that even Nasir El-Rufai, immediate past governor of Kaduna State, a senior member of the APC, membership of the APC is another conversation. Yes, but the point being made is that he said, look, the books of the NNPCL for so and so number of years had not been looked at, and then we saw the NNPCL leadership falling over themselves to say, well, we have audited from so and so year to so and so year. But how do you run a gigantic entity like the NNPCL under the cover? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So if we want to be serious with ourselves, let's be serious. Nobody takes you more seriously than you take yourself. If you're not taking yourself seriously and you expect someone else to do that for you, then I think it's time you woke up. Because the fact of the matter is, there are now countries saying that we need to do more than oil. So let's not make it look like it's an exclusive preserve of Nigeria. Donald Trump just said, drill, baby, drill. All right. So he says we are going to drill to the last drop of oil until we are even tired of oil. So you can see how America is doubling or even tripling down the issue of oil. The same America that will buy from every part of the world. They're now saying we are not only going to drill and refine for local consumption, we are going to export this product. So where does that leave Nigeria? At least at the level of OPEC, for example, the policies of oil and the economy of crude at the international level. So these are conversations we should be having. The leadership in the oil and gas sector in this country must bring their thinking cap to the table and accompany that with a sprinkle of sincerity of purpose.
And we must also have a strong political will from the government to also confront the issues, because one may be at the papers, but as do we have the political will to confront it in terms of implementation? Like that of looking critically into the oil sector, which many have said that until we solve the problem within the oil sector, we are yet to begin to address the problems of Nigeria in respect to the energy sector. So it is still a concern, and for many, it's what government should have a strong political will to continue to confront. And of course, we are still putting a searchlight and knowing the effort made by government in addressing all of those concerns. How far this has gone in terms of impact on the life of Nigerians is enormous. Even the president has acknowledged the fact that this has brought very untold, unplanned, unscheduled hardship on the life of Nigerians. What really unexpected. Nigerians are still looking forward for. What 2025 means, government are targeting 1,500 for $1 in terms of exchange rate, which is still a major concern. The dollarization in Nigeria has also been a problem. Now looks at every political parties are having dollars, at every primaries, walks up the shops, still having that currencies in our country. So dollar is even more popular than our naira.
That's a local currency, right?
You go to the market to buy Gary, he said, one of the traders will tell you dollar is high, even when he or she has not really had the feel of the currency. So we should reduce, the dollarization of our economy, and also seeing how we can also pay attention to homegrown economy. Homegrown solutions, patronizing our homegrown product as well, because this will also have an effect, and reduce the pressure on our currency, naira. It takes role from government. It also takes role from the people as well. There must also be continuous sense of patriotism, to continue to steer the ship and get the Nigeria over dream working. It's a big role and responsibility. We don't trust that we'll get it done.
You see that conversation around the dollarization of the economy is very timely, because whether you like it or not, our legal tender in this country is the naira. We can't talk about kobo anymore, unless in theory. But the naira is a standard legal tender. So how is it that even some government agencies are bidding or accepting bidding dollar? Companies are bidding for contracts in Nigerian agencies, and they are quoting figures in dollar, and then we ultimately award these contracts to these companies. We do business with them in dollar. Yet you're telling us you want area markets in Abia states, to scale and do well. How are you encouraging the traders there? How are you encouraging traders in some of the biggest markets in Kano or somewhere in Maiduguri? How are you encouraging traders in Ibadan, Lagos, and everywhere else across this country? So the long and short of the story is, sincerity of purpose is what we have to bring to the table. You can't be in a country like Nigeria and you get to hear more about dollar than you're hearing about naira. You're now asking yourself, is it possible that this country has now adopted the dollar as its own legal tender? Of course, we know better. But we're taking a break, everyone. When we return, the CBN now says that more than ever before, it is putting in more work to tackling the business, as illicit as it is, of selling the naira inside Nigeria. We'll talk to you about that when we return. To stay with us. This is the point where we begin to get to throttle down on the program this morning. First off, I remember somebody about 10 years ago had actually, maybe a little more than 10 years ago, a civil society individual brought a legal matter against the Central Bank of Nigeria. Maybe there are many more instances, but at least I remember one from 2013. Because he says it's embarrassing and it's a debranding, or what they call the marketing, for you to be in a country like Nigeria and you see a stack or you see stashes of the naira notes being sold. You go to social events, they are selling you money so you can spray, on the celebrants inside Nigeria, and we made it a practice the entire time. And that's why when the case of Bobrisky came up with, I mean, this issue of US prime money and all of that, and then of course there was one of Cubana chief priest. People said, hold on a second, you guys just waking up? Has it not been a practice here for decades? I mean, I'm a relatively young person, but I know that this is something that's been here for long. So at what point did you realize it's wrong? Of course, some people will say, well, better late than never. But are we also being selective in the way we drive justice in this regard? But the long and short of the story is you don't sell currency, much so the naira, inside Nigeria.
I mean, that doesn't really have any concern. It works up to I mean, some of the ATM stands and machines. You will also see that some of them do not even have, cash. So at that moment, the Nigeria economy is also driven by exchange of also cash. Yes, we understand the concern that the last CBN governor, I mean, even when things actually didn't work out the way I planned, he said he's trying to see how we can cashless policy, where we could do transactions, digitally without having a handful of the cash. But we cannot do that because the small businesses in Nigeria, the small scales and all of that, day-to-day businesses are also dependent on these issues of cash. Now it gets to the point where we've also seen people that were selling this naira just because people want to use it for social gathering, a social event. That's even that for social event. How about within the transactions level and basis? Is it right for people to sell now? 5,000 naira is almost, sold at 200 naira in some instances. But it really gets to the concern that even the corporate, the CSE has recently came out to say that registered over 100,000
POS operators.
POS operators is able to have them institutionalized. Is that a way to go? Is that sustainable? If our banks ATMs do not have cash, you walk up to bank, they cannot give you cash. People deposited money in those banks. So why are they not having cash? These are the questions that CMA should be asking. Who are they giving the money to? Because what we understand from all indication is that, the POS operators walks up to banks, get this money, and now sell it to Nigerians. Practices that will continually makes us to abandon ATMs. I can't remember a lot of Nigerians the last time they walks up to ATM stands just for withdrawal. Just accidentally and all of that. So these are what we should pay attention to, because the culture we have introduced, if sustained, is not a good one to get to the point where 5,000 now or 1,000 now will be sold at equivalent, and all of that. So these are the little things that government should also pay attention. The regulators as well should also hasten up their effort in combating this issue, because if really gets to have a root, it will become a problem and a threat to our currency.
I imagine. Well, time limited, but let's just establish real quick that, you see, recently the CBN actually sent out circular talking about the same issue and queried some banks, most of the deposit money banks, the commercial banks as they are usually referred to say, why don't you dispense cash using your ATM terminals anymore? Because if you have an ATM terminal that doesn't have cash, ideally, it should be something that's temporary, or maybe there's a technical problem, or is even your own bank that is not dispensing that has a technical issue, which is usually very transient. All right. However, we've not had a culture where people would rather just go straight by first instinct to a POS point than going to an ATM terminal, because they realize that most of these ATM terminals do not dispense money. Now, it is a no-brainer to understand that there's a conspiracy here. And the CBN knows, without being told, that it has a fundamental responsibility within the framework of its own mandate to ensure that these banks do the needful. Because it is the same CBN that keeps hammering on the banks to ensure that they do KYC, know your customer. So if you can drive that to a logical end, why is it so difficult to make it extremely, almost impossible to say we must hold banks accountable? You see, that's one of the problems, like we were asking Dr. Enang a while ago. Accountability. Once people are given a job, saddled with a task, they've got to be held accountable, no matter who is involved, how highly placed they are. So the CBN, like we've already established, has a very huge role to play in this regard. And Nigerians, I can assure you, will continue to demand accountability on this front for a very long time.
Until we sign out again, just on the morning show today, a lot of concern. When you see a tanker explosion, don't rush to scoop fuel. It's really risky. You know, it's life consuming. About more than 80 lives have been lost in Niger State. So we are signing out with that concern as well. Nigerians should also take precautions, you know, in seeing how to avoid very sad situations like this. My name is Edika Michael. It was a pleasure to have you joining us here on the morning show, which will continue to track latest development for you on our subsequent programming today.
And we at Buffalo certainly a big thank you to you for watching on behalf of the entire team here that has made this possible. Just to also add quickly that all the views of our guests on our programs, including Global Morning, are their opinions. Stay with Global Television. To Global Morning.
Death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
If you don't say we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates